All right. Thanks for your patience, everybody. This week on MS Refresh, just me. If this is your first time tuning in, hi. My co-host Matt is off in Las Vegas speaking at the Microsoft 365 Collaboration Conference, and I'm here holding down the fort for you, our friends, covering everything you can expect to see land this month according to the Microsoft 365 roadmap. So, with no further ado, let's go. Hi there, and welcome to the Matt and Sean 365 Refresh Show. This is episode 47 for the work week of December 6th, 2021. Coming to you from the west coast of the United States, my name is Sean Bugler, and this is usually the part where Matt jumps in and tells you he's on the east coast of the US, but that's not true this time. As I mentioned on the upfront, he's in Las Vegas. I assume reading a good book, catching up on the latest holiday special of the Great British Bake Off, which, if you haven't caught up on, it's pretty good. So we'll likely have a bit of an abbreviated show here. Well, this is live. I'm not 100% sure. I could go off the rails right now. I won't, but I could. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and get into it, starting with just the news.
This is the news.
A point of order here. I usually rotate screens in the background behind the scenes so that you can see what topic I'm talking about here. But because it's just me and I'm also working the teleprompter and the effects, this is going to be a little bit less, lower production than you're used to. I apologize. Here's everything we're expecting to see arrive in the month of December according to the M365 roadmap, starting with everybody's favorite productivity OS, Microsoft Teams. Teams has some long-time promised features slated to arrive later this month, including breakout room presenter support for GCC High. Also in GCC High and DoD, web meeting support in Safari for the 4 of you that are using Safari in GCC High and DoD specifically. This is coming online for 2x2 video views. Teams webinar support for our friends in government, GCC specifically. So that's a nice touch for all of you in the government space. New guest user improvements that show whether invitations are still pending or have been declined is on the way. Likewise, Teams Rooms will pick up the ability to split the video feed layout across multiple screens. Now, if you've got multiple screens, can I have one? Help me out. Also coming later this month in Teams, the ability to hide your own video feed in Teams meeting. Studies have shown that looking at your own face during a meeting can actually provide a fatiguing experience. So for those of you who are already using Zoom, sacrilege, of course, but if you are, you already know that turning off your video feed for just you while still leaving your camera on can go a long way. So that should be coming online for Teams later this month. On the other side of things, if you really want to see yourself, the ability to pin your own video feed in a Teams meeting is also on the way. Continuing to come after Zoom with their convenient hold the spacebar to talk feature, Teams will soon also have the option to hold the control and spacebar buttons to temporarily unmute yourself. The idea here being that you can temporarily unmute without having to go, scroll down and click on the unmute button and then say your piece and then click it again. You'll just be able to hold a couple of buttons on your keyboard. Why control and spacebar? We may never know. Background effects on the web should finally arrive this month. I know we've talked about this a lot. It is apparently scheduled to land in December. And you'll soon have the option to mute all Teams notifications during a Teams meeting. How thoughtful. Let's go ahead and jump over to SharePoint. To nobody's surprise, most of SharePoint's updates these days are actually Microsoft lists or stream updates, but there are still some choice items here nonetheless. The Auto News Digest, an intelligently curated collection of SharePoint news specific to individual users, is set to come online later this month. Also set to come online later this month, hub-to-hub site associations, the ability to connect hub sites with each other to create an even larger network of hubs is also on the way. Now, of course, as we've talked about, this isn't going to give these interconnected hub sites all the benefits of that hub association, but it will broaden the search scope, which is a big deal for a lot of people. For all of you site creators, a redesigned site creation flow is en route, as well as a collection of people cutouts that are just people cut out. So you can put them on your SharePoint pages, I assume, is also on the way via the stock images section of the image picker. Now, this is a big one, and this is the first time I'm hearing about it, so I'm really excited about it. The Microsoft Editor tool, which is Microsoft's competitor to Grammarly, if you're familiar with the service, is set to begin rolling out in modern pages, offering spell check and grammar suggestions for the very first time on modern pages while you're designing the page. A really big deal, because if you're anything like me or anything like a lot of my colleagues, you're not necessarily focused first and foremost on how well this reads or whether you've even spelled things appropriately. So this is a nice benefit for all of us here. And that navigation switch option. This is our last bit here in SharePoint. The navigation switcher, which is going to allow you to move the navigation bar from the left to the top if you're using a team site, and conversely, if you're not using a team site, if you're using a communication site, the ability to move from the top down to the left, as well as the ability to hide the navigation bar, should be landing this month as well. Jumping over to OneDrive, there are a few tidbits here, but we're getting a little light. Those shareable links from the address bar that we keep talking about, the ability to go ahead and move up to the top of your browser and copy the URL and just share that as a shareable link that other users within your organization would actually be able to click on and view the file, that's supposed to be coming as well. So too should the redesigned share card experience, offering more glanceable insights around who already has access to selected files and quicker access to the copy link options. Lastly, in OneDrive, a quick access portion of the sidebar appears to be on the way. This is, again, the first time I'm actually hearing about this, allowing users to quickly pin and reorder shared libraries right from within their OneDrive web experience. And lastly, a few minor items. The Office mobile app for iOS and Android will soon support video creation courtesy of Stream. The Office mobile app will also soon support offline editing. Microsoft To Do is picking up a new sharing experience that Microsoft is calling Inviteless. Really just the ability to add users within your organization by name or email to your list to grant access, kind of like SharePoint. And with that, that is the news.
That was the news.
And that's it, at least with respect to the news. Now, of course, as this is just me flying by the seat of my pants here, I could go in any number of different directions, but I promised Matt that I wouldn't burn the house down while he was gone. So what I wanted to do was take this opportunity to talk about something that just popped up in the news a couple of days ago here. Microsoft just announced that they were releasing a new version of Microsoft Teams called Microsoft Teams Essentials, which is a version of Microsoft Teams that's completely free and built for small businesses. So the idea here is similar to what they're doing already in the universe of personal Microsoft Teams, making that available for individuals. They're trying to, again, attack this lower end of the market with an entirely new product offering that covers just the basics, essentials. They've released a blog post here that I'll go ahead and pull up. Oh, and this is the part where, because I'm on a Mac, ooh, glowing endorsement of Macs coming your way. I've got to approve the ability to share my screen. Nope, we're not going to do it. All right. We're going to skip sharing my screen live here, but I'll go ahead and make sure that we share the blog post in the show notes. But again, it's this idea that Microsoft is designing a small business version of Microsoft Teams that tackles just kind of the core uses. It's important to note that it does expand the limits of the free tier, the Microsoft Teams that we were already familiar with. But it is ultimately still the same Microsoft Teams experience that we know and love. It does extend meeting times with meetings that can last up to 30 hours, as well as the ability to host up to 300 people at once. Of course, it's going to incorporate Outlook calendar integration and, big news, Google Calendar integration with Microsoft Teams, meaning you can still use your existing calendaring tool within your organization if you happen to be a G Suite shop. Of course, you can tap into everything that Microsoft Teams already has to offer, including, this is a part of the Teams Essential bundle as well, It's going to include 10 gigabytes of file storage, which is double the amount of the free version of Teams that's currently available here. So again, this is all designed for small businesses to help support these organizations here, because ultimately, if there's anything that we've learned over the last 18, 20 months, it's that small businesses are going to need a lot of help to get through this incredible disruption that we've experienced worldwide. The reality is that small businesses can't afford to have entire IT teams dedicated to operating these systems that oftentimes Microsoft tends to build with the biggest customers in mind. So this is going to be a nice touch. Again, we'll share the blog post in the show notes below. But to that end, gang, because it is just me, I don't want to bore you all here. I'm going to go ahead and just take a look and see if there are any comments here. Now, we did get a question a little bit earlier here, and this is always the opportunity. This is the part where I flag that we schedule these live streams a couple of days in advance. We tend to run these Pacific time Monday nights, East Coast even later nights, and for all of our friends in Europe, really, really late. And again, I don't, for example, our friend Malcolm Smith here, it gets a little bit late. I appreciate you all holding on here. But to that end, you can always ask questions, even if you can't make the live show, and we'll answer them, or we'll do our best to. One of the questions that we got was about the free Visio back in, I want to say it was May of this year, at the first version of the M365 collaboration conference. There was a hybrid conference that both myself and Matt spoke at. My friend and yours, Dan Holm of Microsoft, announced that Visio was being made available. A free version of Visio was being made available to most M365 consumer plans. So that we would all have some version of Visio that we could tap into. They were still going to support, the plan 1 and the plan 2. They're not going to give up that revenue necessarily, but they were going to give us some version of Visio. Now, that, as I mentioned, was months ago, and they've been saying soon ever since. Well, we did double check to make sure that this was still the case. It is still scheduled, as far as we can tell, to land this year. We have heard no changes to that regard. I've seen users that have picked up the license, which leads me to believe that it is steadily rolling out. But yeah, so for anybody who's curious about the Visio rollout, I don't think they've changed their mind. It is still on the way. Thank you for the dip in production quality here. I appreciate the patience. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're getting the news out to you guys. It is hard enough to stay on top of everything that's happening out there. And so if we can be useful, even in just the smallest of capacities, to let you know what's coming, like the quick access toolbar in OneDrive, like that's exciting. I didn't even know about that. So you guys hold me to account so that I actually look this stuff up. Of course, Kevin Crossman, who's been with us for quite some time, says Microsoft Editor needs a better marketing team. Completely undersold in the market. Kevin, I couldn't agree with you more. For those of you that don't know about Microsoft Editor, for some reason, Microsoft keeps positioning it as just kind of an evolution of the spell check tool, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. Microsoft Editor is this cross-platform, cross-functional tool that is designed to not just spell check. It does do spell check, but it also does context checks. It helps to improve the conciseness of your writing. It's a really, really powerful tool. Again, I referenced in the news Grammarly. For those of you who are familiar with the service, the web service Grammarly, it's very good. They charge like $10 a month for that service, and Microsoft is giving this away for free to anyone with a Microsoft 365 subscription. So that's awesome. If you haven't checked out Microsoft Editor, you absolutely should. If you're using Word, Excel, PowerPoint, it's already built into those tools. As we mentioned, it's also getting rolled out into the SharePoint Modern Web Page Design experience. It's also available as a browser extension for Microsoft Edge and Google Chrome, which means that you can spell check using Microsoft Editor and, again, context and grammar checks across the web just by using the browser extension. So really, really nice there. I knew this was going to happen. Yeah, use a PC. I won't. It's just not fun. PC, I'm sorry. For those of you who use PCs, I have all the respect in the world for you. It's just not my cup of tea. Jumping over here, will the Google Calendar integration also work in a Microsoft Teams E5 account? Currently, it will not. So that's a great question. I don't have the answer right now, but I will look into it, and I will make sure to bring it up next week when we have our regular kind of resumption of the show with Matt and myself. My presumption is that there will be some version of this, that Microsoft isn't going to keep this bucketed to the small business tier of that. That would be odd. But I've been surprised at the decisions they've made as of late. So who knows? And throwing back to our Vizio question from earlier, Vizio landed in JB's tenant about 3 weeks ago. And that seems to jive with kind of my experience as well as Kevin's, which is the Vizio rollout is happening just really, really slowly here. And it's anybody's guess as to why, whether it's they're testing the combination of features that they're making available for free, how lean can they make it, or if this is really just a question of making sure that they are unlocking it in a way that doesn't take down entire tenants. I can't imagine that's the case, but who knows? But yeah. So gang, that's all I've got for you here. As always, this is a great opportunity for me to plug this show. If you aren't already subscribed, you should absolutely subscribe to the Jump to 365 channel. It's not just Matt and myself. It's also Matt putting out a ton of really great content. There's a reason he's speaking in Las Vegas today, or this week rather. And it's because he brings a ton of value. So again, if you haven't subscribed so you can get those notifications, please do so. A like and a live. It's live. A like and a subscribe is always much appreciated here. We love to continue the conversation well beyond this live video. And that's a great way to do so. Of course, you can find both Matt and myself on Twitter and LinkedIn. Those are always available in the show description, which will, I imagine, show up in the next 20 to 25 minutes. But otherwise, gang, thank you so much for the time, and stay safe out there. All right.